This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everyone. If anybody has said this to you, my family's great. We never have any issues whatsoever. Everything is always great. No trouble whatsoever. They're not being truthful. I'm not being negative here. I'm just being real. That in family situations, there's always going to be a little something going on here, a little something going on there. How do you navigate those relationships when it comes to family? We're going to talk with somebody that works with families all the time, individuals as well. And he is a licensed and family therapist, also a certified family mediator, and lots more. He's our professional of the year. Gary Santucci is back on the program. Hey, Gary, how are you doing?
Good, Steve. How are you today?
Good. How does that go? You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family.
Can't pick your family, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I stand by that statement that everybody's got something going on. And if somebody's saying they don't, never any issues with family, it's just not true. It's part of life. It's called a relationship. There's always going to be, give and take, a little bit of, change here, whatever it might be, when it comes to our family relationships. And I'm sure you deal with a lot of that in your practice.
Absolutely. Never met a family that did not have issues.
There you
If
go.
they're telling you that they don't, like you said before, I'm not sure that that's very, very truthful. There's so many aspects of families and family dynamics, and it's at the center of, I think, a lot of who we are as individuals and as children and as adults, as parents, as siblings, how we deal with friendships, how we deal with relationships, all centers on what's taking place in the family and how that evolves into our lives and dictates how we behave in so many respects.
When something comes up within the family, is it to be addressed the same as if you were to deal with a friend situation or any relationship? Or is it conflict, relationship, resolution? Does it really matter that it's a family member, or does that change everything?
I think to some degree it changes things. When we live with somebody, and I think that's still one of the hardest things that we do is live with another person. Yep. As opposed to when we're talking about friendship conflicts, shall we say? Okay, we don't live with that person necessarily, but our families, we live with our parents, we live with our siblings, and so there's a lot. The dynamics are very, very different. We're together more often. There's more drama, I think. There's more, shall we say, irritation or agitation from each other. And then I think also it depends on the environment that family lives in, whether that's a healthy environment or an unhealthy environment, a functional environment or dysfunctional environment. There are vast differences in those two things, and how we come out of that.
It's interesting you said when you live with somebody, the whole different dynamic. And I'm a firm believer, even if it's a friend or friends, just go on vacation with them. You'll see.
Right.
About that. We've even done that, wow, I didn't know that, and by the way, my best friend's, his name is Gary. So you get to learn, and we've been friends since school, junior high. But when in our 20s, when we first went on vacation, we went to Florida, went to Disney. It was 3 guys going together. It was like, wow, that's, that's your habit. That's what you do. This is,
right. We all have our quirks. We all have our things, and they differ from one another, from one family to another. And so when that's blended into, for example, like you say, going on a vacation with friends, okay, you see those kinds of differences.
You do.
But in our families, we don't think of them as differences. This is how we grew up. So it's normal to us, whatever that means.
Is there normal?
I don't know. I get asked all the time, am I normal? I just don't know what normal is because it's an undefinable word.
Right.
It could be, with one family, this is their normal, and another family right next door, it's their normal,
Right.
and they could be vastly different.
It's very subjectionable, the word normal.
It
And
is.
culturally, this could
Yes,
be whatever this is could be normal for that family and their culture, but somebody else would look at that and say, "Well, what are you doing over there?"
right. Well, culture, I think, is a very big part of that, because families give all individuals an opportunity to develop that sense of self through culture, through our morals, through our emotional framework. Okay. And that could be a very healthy kind of thing, a healthy kind of outcome, or an unhealthy outcome, depending again on the environment and what's going on in that environment. Is that a supportive environment? Are you growing up in the sense that there's open communication, respectful communication, or are you growing up in a hostile environment where there's a lot of battles going on, a lot of fighting, just a lot of nastiness, and that becomes a way of life. Just
Mhm.
like healthy can become a way of life, unhealthy becomes a way of life, and we see that a lot in families.
How about looking at family dynamics involving kids? And let's say there's a situation where one parent is being negative about the other parent to their child. How do you deal with that kind of situation, either coming through the child's eyes, or it could be a teen, or the other parent that's being, call it, alienated?
With when parents are, for example, they're fighting in front of the children, which to me is something that we really want to avoid. But yet it happens, and it happens a lot.
Mm,
When they're fighting, they really want the children to take sides.
yeah.
I'm in the right here, and mom's in the wrong, dad's in the wrong, and I want you to know that, okay, by my behaviors, my actions, how I'm talking to the other parent, and so on. So there's all these factors that come into play, and if I can get you on my side, it is that alienation of affection, which is very dangerous for the other parent that's being alienated, because the other parent that's being alienated is being excluded from the child's life. And I don't ever think that that's a healthy thing, unless that parent that's being alienated is abusive or neglectful. Then for sure, I think from a healthy standpoint, they ought to be alienated. But other than that, if you're excluding that parent because you're upset with that parent, and that's why maybe you're getting a divorce or a separation, that's just putting that child in the middle. Child really loves both parents. I
Mm.
love my mom, I love my dad, and yet they're being put in a position at a young age when they don't have the resources and the wherewithal to make a decision. And sometimes that decision is essentially made for them. So it's a tough situation for children to be in when parents are fighting like that, and they're pushing that child to side with one or the other. That's difficult. Child doesn't have those kind of tools to be able to navigate something like that.
That's a great point, because I think the parents forget about that. They just assume, yeah, the kid's on my side. The kid's 8.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, when you get caught up in a fight, it's almost like anything goes. You don't really care about anybody else being around because you're in that fight and you want to win the fight. And if those fights are frequent, and a lot of families, fights are frequent, and we're fighting about the same kinds of things over and over again. Children hear that. And then afterwards, they take on those roles when they become adults, and they fight just like they saw their parents. We're a product of our environment.
Yep.
So when we see those things growing up, healthy or unhealthy, the unhealthy things, if they're not dealt with and done away with, they continue. We don't break the pattern.
So when we talk about family dynamics, how about another situation? Anything that stands out for you, hypothetically, and how you would suggest it be dealt with?
Well, when we talk about, we learn how to communicate in our families, okay? And that communication can be open or respectful, like I said earlier, or it can be very toxic. And again, that can continue into when you are an adult, as a child, when you are an adult. If you have open and respectful communication growing up, good chance that you're going to be that way as an adult. Conversely, if it's toxic, there's a very good chance that you're going to have that same kind of communication. So then your children, if you have children, are going to be a product of that. So we just continue the pattern. Want to break that pattern and have open and respectful communication. That's healthy. That's healthy. That open and respectful communication also gives way to being able to problem solve, being able to deal with your emotions in a healthy, positive way. We all have emotions, and we want to be able to express them. If we can learn how to express them and learn them as children, as adults, we're going to be much healthier in being able to express those. We're going to have healthier relationships because relationships are based on emotion. So we're going to have healthier relationships moving forward. That's a very big part of it. There's also, we assume in a family, there's different roles in the family. And everybody that's a member of that family has roles. Father has a certain role. Mom has a certain role. A brother, a sister, they all have certain roles. The hierarchy of where the children are born, the oldest as opposed to the youngest, and so on. They all have certain roles in the families, okay? And those roles, I think, can also help create respective boundaries. If we learn boundaries at an early age, I also think that creates a healthy lifestyle for someone. That we can establish boundaries, we can live by those boundaries, and we're not going to necessarily intrude on someone else's boundaries. So I think that those are very healthy kinds of ways that we can learn in a shall we say, a healthy environment, a family that has open communication, a family that sets respectful boundaries, a family that has healthy values and healthy morals and healthy emotional support. All of those things can create an individual that when they go off into the real world, they can continue that same pattern. And we need more of that. We need so much more of that today.
Do you have a suggestion when a family challenge comes up, the best way to handle it in terms of communication and whatever that might be? Is that, the two parties get together with the others? Is it write it down? Like whatever it may be, just a rule of thumb, a guideline. Again, every situation is different, but let's say it's family connected and it could be, part of the extended family. There's a riff with, could be siblings, whatever it is. What's the best way to resolve?
Ideally, the best way to resolve it would be to have like family meetings, where everybody has an opportunity to express themselves, whether it's a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a teenager, and the adults. I think one of the things that we want to understand too is that in families, it's not necessarily a democracy. I don't think it really can be. I think that there has to be authority. There has to be, the adults have to be the leaders and set the tone and set the direction and be able to guide the children. So it's not necessarily a democracy. Children have a voice, but the adults are the ones that are going to set the rules. And if the rules are some that need to be changed, then we can discuss that, okay, through a family meeting. Unfortunately, many families don't have those kinds of things. They don't really talk to each other. They yell at each other in arguments and screaming episodes. And those are very common in many families. And those become power struggles. I want to win that fight. And so I'm going to argue and be loud and yelling and screaming and nasty and put down and critical and name calling and all kinds of things like that. At the end of the day, that doesn't result in any kind of solution. The opposite would be to have a discussion where, everybody can express how they feel and work toward a resolution. If you can see in a family that you can reach agreement, that's going to also carry you into the future where that a situation comes into play, an issue comes into play, and because of your experiences, you know how to reach a solution. You know the dynamics that are needed to reach that solution. So all of this is happening when you're growing up. If you're growing up in that healthy environment, that's a very positive thing.
Well, yeah, you're actually setting the stage for the way that your children are going to deal with conflict. Right.
Yes.
It would be great if we were all the Brady Bunch. Remember they used to get together
yes.
and talk about a situation. I mean, we kind of laughed at it, but it's like, that was really cool if you could do that,
Here's another thing. I think that I don't know that many families can do this. I know some families can do this. Dinner time, for example. Even once a week, Sunday dinner, where everybody is together and everybody can express and talk and have a conversation with each other. What's going on? What's going on with you? How are you doing in school? What's happening in your life? That kind of thing. Okay. I know that some families can't do that because of scheduling and so on and so forth. I get that. But if we can have that happen, because it's a 20-minute kind of time frame where we're all together, no phones, none of that, right? No electronics, and we're just talking and sharing the day, sharing how we feel, sharing our thoughts. Okay, we get to know each other in a better way, a healthier way. So those kinds of things, if they happen more often, even if we're sitting around and playing a game together as a family, or we're just outside on a nice summer night on a patio and just enjoying each other's company. We don't do enough of that, because we're so busy with other kinds of things, electronics and all that other stuff that's come into play, social media, video games, that sort of thing. So we miss out on those opportunities.
That's a great point to check in, checking in with everybody.
Right.
And that could even be picking up, from a previous situation. You get together a week later. So how did it go with that teacher? Did you take care of that homework assignment? Whatever it might be. It's just an update, getting a check-in.
And when we don't have that, we generally find out after the fact.
Right.
Oh, well, Johnny got suspended from school today because he was smoking pot in the bathroom. Okay, great. I didn't know about that. You didn't know about that. We don't know if we're not talking to our kids. We don't know what they're doing. And if we don't know what they're doing, there are surprises that can easily come into play.
I remember my son was in junior high and he got suspended. So my first thought was, the kid got suspended. Like, what is going on here? Well, it was only until a further conversation revealed that he was hanging out with his friends now in the lunchroom. And the friend said to him, I bet you can't hit me from where you are. And my son's like, I bet I can. Like the distance of my arm. He's like, nah, I bet you can. And my son went like this and connected with his face. He was fine, but somebody saw it. And there's our rules. And they both got suspended. I forget if it was in school suspension or what. It was just a day or whatever. But I would have never known. My first thought was that it was, when you hear your kid got suspended, you're wondering what the heck is going on here. But it was all in fun. But that was the rules in the school.
Right. And again, if you're having conversations with your kids, about these things. Some parents don't even know who their kids' friends are.
Yeah.
That's scary. That's scary.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's so many opportunities for kids to get in trouble today, and without parents knowing about it. I understand too that parents are working, and single parents, for example, may have to work 2 jobs. That's certainly not an easy situation. But nevertheless, those kinds of things, kids take advantage of it. Any child's going to take advantage of that kind of, should we say, that kind of freedom. So that can be very dangerous as well.
And even as a parent, I know it's extra work. It can be uncomfortable. You want to avoid any confrontation if there would ever be any, but just meeting the parents of kids that your kid hangs out with more often than others, so impactful. I mean, it's almost as if now you have an alliance with them, so you can tip each other off on certain things that maybe that parent wouldn't be aware of.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah,
that's part of communication too,
yeah, yeah,
right?
true. It's in
Mhm.
that situation, it's almost like having another parent
Yes.
present because they're
Yeah.
just, not that they want to rat out your kid, but if they notice something that's a little, once I got a call from a mother and she said, just want to let you know what your daughter is wearing to the pool today. I'm like, what do you mean? I know what she's got. Oh, I don't know.
Well, it says it takes a village, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Yep.
grew up in a small village. Okay.
Mm,
And everybody knew everybody. So oftentimes my parents would know things before I even walked in the door.
wow.
Yeah.
Mm. Which is kind of cool in a way.
Yeah.
You
Not at
know,
the time for
no,
me, but
no.
for them it was kind of cool.
But like you say with the village, you think of some of those, uh, smaller situations, even, from a couple of hundred years ago, where everybody was watching everybody, taking care of everybody. Now it's like,
Mhm.
because of schedules and social communication nowadays, if you will,
Yeah.
that people just disconnect. There's actually, based on that, there's actually a term I read today, the Gen X stare. And it's now trending where, Gen X doesn't really talk a lot, but they just give you a stare. They're processing, but they're not communicating. So now that's kind of a thing now. Um, yeah, and again, right, back to social media, which we've talked about before, taking some of that the need to communicate verbally away from a lot of people, especially younger, right?
Let's talk about another topic with respect to families. Blended families,
Ooh, yeah.
you know,
Mm,
blended families are certainly more common today than ever before. People are getting divorced at a pretty good rate and forming other families. So, one family is combined with another family. Sometimes that works very well, but many times that creates all kinds of situations. And then we have sides in a household. We have two sides. And that can be very devastating to the couple that are trying to establish a relationship. And one couple has kids, or one parent has children, the other parent has other children, and together that becomes a very combustible kind of environment.
yeah.
So that's also a very difficult thing to navigate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then,
Communication would be an essential thing
oh my
to help
gosh.
that. Yes.
And especially when you have a step parent and who's got, authority, if you will.
Right.
That's a whole
Right.
other
You can't
challenge.
tell my kid what to do,
Right. Right.
Oh boy.
Mm. Best way to find you, Gary, if somebody's having some family challenges or just need some therapy, need somebody to talk to. Best way is your website. That's your name, right?
GarySantucci.com. Mm-hmm.
Got it. And
And
Santucci, Santucci, right?
that's and you can reach me at GarySantucci74@gmail.com. You can also call me at 954-474-1119. And you can also call me and text me at 954-817-1401. That's my cell number.
Awesome.
Any one of those four, you can reach me.
You're reachable.
Yeah.
You give your cell phone number out. Thank you for today. Even just the reminder to check in with the
Yes.
fam. Good stuff.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
All right.
indeed.
We'll catch up next time.
Thank you.
Thanks again. This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.